We've all heard the official story, right? It's a global war against these shadowy cartels, a clear fight for the soul of our society. But look, after 50 years and literally trillions of dollars spent, this war is still raging. So what if the official story isn't the whole story? First, let's just get our heads around the scale of this. According to the United Nations, in the last year alone, 360 million people around the world used illicit drugs. And get this, that number is actually growing faster than the global population. This is not some fringe issue. This is a massive global phenomenon. And this is how the whole war was framed, right? From the very beginning. Back in 1973, President Nixon declared war on the drug menace, and he painted this really clear picture of good versus evil, a simple us versus them. But what if that line in the sand was never really that clear? What if the very governments declaring this war were, at times, actually playing for the other side? That's the secret history we're going to unearth today. To really understand the drug trade we see today, you have to go back, way back, to the 19th century. Because the blueprint for today's global trafficking networks, it wasn't drawn up by some cartel kingpin. Nope, it was designed, financed, and enforced by an empire. And that brings us to the Opium Wars. Think about this. Twice in the 19th century, Western powers, led by Great Britain, literally went to war with China for one single reason: to force the country to buy mass quantities of opium. This was state-sponsored narco-trafficking on a scale that is just mind-boggling. So why? Well, it all came down to simple economics. China was exporting huge amounts of tea, silk, and porcelain to Britain, but they didn't really want anything the British were selling. This created a massive trade deficit. So the British East India Company found a pretty sinister solution: get the Chinese population addicted to opium that was being grown in British-controlled India. And you know what? The plan worked. It worked scarily well. By 1833, opium imports just exploded to over 2,000 tons a year. An entire nation was being systematically hooked on a drug for profit. They created a public health catastrophe just to balance a budget. And there it is. That's the blueprint. A powerful government using its military to force a weaker nation to accept drugs, all for economic gain. Remember this model, because we are definitely going to see it again. Okay, now let's fast forward to the 1980s. The public face of the drug war was all about zero tolerance. But behind the scenes, there was a secret war being fought with a very different set of rules. So this was the public image they wanted everyone to see: President Nixon declaring a total, uncompromising war on narcotics. And this declaration, it led directly to the creation of the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, to lead the charge. And the message to the public couldn't have been clearer. It was absolute. No negotiation, no compromise. Drug traffickers were the enemy, plain and simple, and they would be hunted down without exception. And this war, like any war, had its heroes and its martyrs. In 1985, DEA agent Kiki Camarena was brutally murdered by the Guadalajara cartel. His death triggered something called Operation Leyenda, one of the largest manhunts in DEA history, and it really cemented the cartels as public enemy number one. But while the DEA was out there fighting that very public war, declassified documents are telling a very, very different story. This right here is from the personal notebook of National Security Council aide Oliver North. On July 12, 1985, he notes that $14 million to finance weapons for the Contra rebels in Nicaragua came from drugs. And it wasn't just a one-off. While the Justice Department was publicly throwing the book at traffickers, privately, top officials were trying to protect 100 in general who'd been caught shipping $40 million worth of cocaine into the U.S. You see the pattern here? There was one set of rules for the public and a completely different one for their assets. This is the explosive core of journalist Gary Webb's Dark Alliance series. The allegation it was that the CIA knowingly supported Contra-linked smugglers who were supplying key figures in the American crack cocaine epidemic. The secret war had come home. So where did all that dirty money go? I mean, it didn't just vanish into thin air. It was washed, cleaned, and then injected directly into the global financial system. Yeah, that's not a typo. That's $1.256 billion. That is the amount the global banking giant HSBC had to forfeit after it admitted to laundering money for drug cartels. Now, what's really revealing here isn't just the sheer size of the number, it's what it represents. The incredible scale of corporate complicity that's required to keep the global drug trade alive. And today, the game has completely changed again. The drug trade has evolved from plant-based drugs like cocaine and heroin into this synthetic hydra. It's cheaper, it's deadlier, and it is far, far more profitable. So here's how the new business model works. The precursor chemicals, they're sourced from China. Then they're shipped to Mexico, where cartels like the CJNG manufacture them into pills, like fentanyl. Now, a pill that costs just 10 cents to make can sell for $25 on American streets. The profit margin is it's astronomical. And we have to be clear, these aren't just gangs anymore. The CJNG is basically a global corporation. According to the DEA, it has operations on every single continent except Antarctica. And it's involved in everything from synthetic drugs and human trafficking to illegal gold mining. So what's the human cost of all this, of this global business? Well, an estimated 64 million people worldwide suffer from drug use disorders. But, and as this UN data shows, for every 12 people who desperately need treatment, only one actually gets it. It is a staggering, heartbreaking gap between the problem and the solution. Which really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. After 50 years, after trillions of dollars have been spent, and after countless lives have been lost, who exactly is this war being fought against? And who's winning? This chart right here tells the story of the last 5 decades better than anything else. The top line, that's government spending on drug enforcement. As you can see, it has skyrocketed. The bottom line, that's the street price of illicit drugs, which has plummeted, while the purity has gone up. So let's be blunt. More spending has resulted in cheaper, more potent, and more available drugs. By any objective measure you can find, the war has failed. So we're left with this question. When a war produces the exact opposite of its stated goals for half a century, is it really a failure? Or is it a system that's functioning exactly as it was designed, enriching governments, corporations, and criminals all at the same time? Who really profits from a war that's unwinnable by design?